There's an old saying that goes like this: everyone's greatest blessing is also their greatest curse. Marriage is an unconditional commitment to an imperfect person. And that's precisely why it is one of God's greatest tools for holiness. Marriage doesn't exist primarily to make us happy. It exists to make us holy. The same goes for family life. Marriage and family life are two of the most effective ways God has of curing our built-in selfishness. One of the things I like to, if you ever go to a wedding mass that I celebrate, you're going to hear this in my homily every single time. But one of the things is I look at the couple and I look at the couple, especially that couple over there, and I say, you're not marrying Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, but you're actually marrying the cross in which your holiness will come from. And so that applies to married life as well as family life. And for all these parents out there, I think here's a fun fact for you. What happens when you spell diaper backwards? It turns into repaid. Family life is a masterclass in the art of apologizing. Every day gives us a new chance to say, I'm sorry, to our spouse and to our children. And that may actually be God's blessing in disguise. Because we tend to beat ourselves up over our mistakes, but very often our biggest failures double as our greatest opportunities. How will our children ever learn to apologize themselves if they don't see us do it first? Somewhere along the way, sometimes it comes sooner than later, many of us realize a hard truth. Our greatest joys and our greatest sufferings are both tied into family life. Which raises a question. Why does God bother to invent family at all? He could have made us like ferns, self-sufficient and self-propagating, but he didn't. Instead, what does he do with us? He created us in his own image and likeness. And in doing so, we reflect the Lord in a way. And God is not solitary, neither are we. God is a triune God. He's communal in nature, a communion of persons built together in self-giving love. So as are we. We are meant for communion, for community. To be created in the image and likeness of God is to be created ultimately for family life. But family life does not come pre-assembled. The perfect family is not available on a wedding registry or under the Christmas tree. Family life is a vocation, a task entrusted to us by God. By creating us in his own image, God has made us like a coloring book, the outline of which we are meant to be is provided, and the crayons are there too, but it's up to each and every one of us to color it in. God gives us the outline and the crayons, but he asks us to color it in. And really to fill in that outline, we only need 3 crayons. The first crayon is respecting family rules. Just as a tree has roots, a trunk, and branches, the family has a natural structure: a father, a mother, and children. Each role is distinct and unique, but each is necessary. That we had from the first reading from Sirach and also in the second reading from Colossians, a great reminder that parents are entrusted with authority. But that authority comes from God and must be exercised as service. Parents are called to love, to teach the faith, and to train their children in virtue. And yes, all you kids out there, Mom and dad are in charge. And this is not a side project for the parents. It's your primary mission. St. Paul tells us how that mission is lived. Spouses must serve one another in love. Today we had it from the reading of Colossians, which talks about the wives being subordinate to their husband and husbands surrendering their lives for their wives. This is not as intense as the Ephesians, which kind of goes a little bit more in depth for the role of the wife as well as the role of the husband. But at the root of that subservience to the husband and that dying of the husband for his wife comes from what? It comes from a selfless, self-giving love that reflects the Trinity. From that joyful mutual self-gift flows the life of their children. And those children need a home nourished by that same self-forgetting, self-giving love that brought them into being. And you can't find that in a how-to manual of how to be parents. It comes through parents loving one another as Christ has loved them. And kids, even though I'm telling you that your parents are in charge, you have a role too. It's to honor and to obey your parents while growing up, and to respect and care for them later on. Healthy families depend on us living out our role. Archbishop Fulton Sheen, in his book, It Takes Three to Get Married, he talks about the family, and he puts it in a wonderful image of a triangle, which that should immediately make us think of the Trinity first. And he ties this in. He says the Trinity is, it's, if you grew up with the Baltimore Catechism, or even in religious ed, you might see the image of the Trinity. It's like a triangle. It shows the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and it talks about the different relations that they have. I'm not doing a Trinitarian discourse for the homily, don't worry. But one of those things is, so as being made in the image and likeness of God, Fulton Sheen, one of the things that he says, marriage reflects that image and family reflects it even further. What do I mean by this? He says it takes three to get married. It takes the bride and the groom to get married, and then it takes God, creating that triangle. Each one is in relation with the other in a self-giving, because we must give to God as well as to our spouse. But then once that's married, obviously the connection with God is still there. But then the bride and the groom, as man and wife, take that image. It's not a perfect image of the Trinity, but take that image, and then they reflect it down. It's father, mother, child. So in doing so, we participate in the procreative act of God in the family. But just like with the triangle shape itself, if you break one of the sides, if you remove one of the corners, it falls apart. If selfishness breaks one side, the whole triangle collapses. Which brings us to the second crayon, which is respecting roles. And that's not easy in a fallen world. So St. Paul gives us a simple formula for rebuilding what gets bent or broken. 2 words. I'm sorry. Do you know that selfish people don't say sorry? Why is that? It's because they have learned to not put themselves in other people's shoes. Instead of washing feet like Jesus, they wash their hands like Pontius Pilate. They deny responsibility. They shift the blame. They play the victim. And ultimately, they try and play God. Paul says, bear with one another. Forgive one another. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also do. There is no atmosphere of forgiveness without someone being willing to ask for forgiveness first. One of the greatest gifts that we can give to our families is the decision to be the first to say, I'm sorry, even when it costs us our own pride. Really, that little phrase is like super glue for relationships. Actually, it's even better than super glue. It's like a broken bone that heals. And when a bone heals, it's stronger than it was before. Families nourished by forgiveness can grow stronger through hardship if they are willing to humble themselves. And that brings us to the third crayon, which may surprise us, but if you've been around the block for a little bit, it's not the case. The third crayon is expect trouble. We are pilgrims. We are soldiers in a real spiritual battle. We are sinners living among other sinners. Today's gospel shows us that the Holy Family is on the run. So they're not the band on the run, they're the fam on the run. I was hoping that would land, but homeless, afraid, struggling just to survive. If suffering touched the holiest family that ever lived, why do we expect our families to be spared of that reality? God permits hardships because hardships bring us closer to him. As one spiritual writer once said, we are closer to God in desolation, in suffering, than we ever are in consolation or in joy. Matthew, the gospel writer today, tells us that even the flight into Egypt was fulfilling God's plan of salvation, where he says, out of Egypt I called my son. So too in our own families, when we face trials with faith, we grow in virtue and learn to love more heroically. Family life is a school where we learn to live out that image of God. Pope Paul VI tells us that the school of faith, the domestic church, is the family. And that is where the faith is kindled. We cannot encourage vocations, we cannot encourage Christian life without living that out in the domestic church, our families. And it's for this very reason that the family structure is under constant attack in our culture. Not because the structure of family is weak, but because at its nature, it reveals the loving nature of God. When marriage, life, fidelity, and sacrifice are undermined, the image of God is disfigured. Many modern movements claim to promote freedom and dignity, but in reality, they hollow out the very structure that makes freedom possible. These movements resent the fact that God is God, and they are not. This is at the root of the movement for promoting same-sex unions as equivalent to marriage. Contrary to popular belief, they're not the same. For expanding abortion law, promoting contraception and premarital sex, again, not the same as marriage and family. For the promotion of legalizing euthanasia. All of these things, to put it into an image, is like dismantling a car. Like a car, it brings you from one place to another. If you dismantle a car, you bend and melt the pieces into art and put them on a display. Yeah, that looks really nice. But that ceases to be a car. And that car will never take you home. God wants us to make it home. He wants us to make it to heaven with him. And he has given us the family, yes, very imperfect, incredibly demanding, but also grace-filled, as one of the primary ways in which he does that. The cold, hard reality is that we can all come from broken families. But the Lord, through the example of the Holy Family, he invites us once again to pick up the crayons that he has given us, to respect our roles, to ask for forgiveness and to be sorry, and to trust him even when family life is hard. If we do that, even though we won't do it perfectly, he will bring us not just out of the driveway, but all the way home to heaven. We just need to work with him.